Hey everybody, it is Gordon Majak here, back with another episode of Timeless Pop, Rock, and Soul. And today we are going back to 1984 for a song that, no joke, is easily in my top 10 of the entire 80s decade, and it might be knocking on the door of the top 5. That is how much I love this song. The crazy thing is the way this song came to me back there in 1984 and sort of the process of me getting exposed to this song. That is what is so bizarre and such a unique phenomenon. It's only happened just a few times to me in my music career, but I want to share that with you really quick before we jump into this incredible music, because this is a song that just haunts me to this day, almost coming up, on 40 years since 1984. This backstory is just nuts. Wait till you hear this. Remember this album and this band? This is The Cars and their album from the spring of 1984, their Heartbeat City. That was sort of considered an iconic album cover in its own right, wasn't it, back there in the 80s? All of the Cars album covers were pretty cool. But I think this was one that certainly got a lot of attention back there in the day. Now, here's the funny thing about my history with this song in particular and with the Cars in general. So the Cars come out of Boston there in the late 70s, and they rattle off a pretty impressive string of hit records there on the pop rock charts, right? And the cool thing about the Cars was they had a lot of good things going for them. First of all, they had a really cool and charismatic frontman and vocalist in Ric Ocasek, who played the rhythm guitar and also wrote the lion's share of the material for the group. So it was Ric Ocasek that was really the frontman and the main guy and sort of the driving creative force behind the Cars. And the cool thing about Ric Ocasek, he was a charismatic and as I said, sort of a cutting edge and kind of cool fashionista frontman, but he was also a talented singer and had a very unique sound. He had a very catchy and quirky sound, but it really worked for him, and it really worked for the way the band put their sound together. And they stuck out. Let's just face that. Nobody sounded like the Cars. They had a really unique sound from the start. Now, the other cool thing that they had, in addition to some really talented instrumentalists in the band, including their very underrated guitarist, their lead guitarist, Elliot Easton, pretty talented player in his own right, and I think a guitarist that a lot of other pro guitarists always admired and respected. Greg Hawkes on the keyboards, always laying down some pretty cool keyboard tracks. David Robinson back there on the drums, whether it was acoustic drums or electronic drums, always came up with some really cool driving drum parts. But then bassist and vocalist Benjamin Orr was sort of the band's secret weapon, because even though Ric Ocasek sang the lion's share of the songs that he himself had written for the band, every once in a while, bassist Benjamin Orr got to step out and sing, and he was a pretty talented vocalist in his own right. He had a very unique sound himself, and it was a really cool contrast with Ric Ocasek. So Benjamin Orr comes out there on that first song, Just What I Needed, in 1978, June of 78. That was actually sung by Benjamin Orr. But then the next couple songs, next couple singles, My Best Friend's Girl in 1978 and Let the Good Times Roll. Remember that one? That's the three singles from that first album. And I just remember that album landed, man, what a bomb. What a huge hit album that was. And I used to love to play Good Times Roll, even Into the Club is a good rock number, into my club days there. But that was a Ric Ocasek vocal. 1979, they come back again with their next album, another big hit, a song called Let's Go, another one I played in the clubs constantly. And Benjamin Orr got to sing on that one as well. But then it was a string, quite a long string. The next run of singles, Shake It Up, You Might Think, and Magic, were all Ric Ocasek. And it was sort of seeming like as the band went on that Ric Ocasek was even more so out front than he had ever been before. And it seemed like there were fewer and fewer opportunities for Benjamin Orr. And that's just one of the reasons why, in my mind, when I thought about the Cars and thought about this run of hits that they had and sort of the signature part of their catalog that they had put together, so many big hit songs. I mean, a couple of these songs went all the way up to #1 on the rock chart. So the Cars were very productive, pretty pretty consistent, knocking out hit after hit. And as I said, they were very original. They had such an original and such a creative and kind of quirky sound that really appealed to a lot of people. Well, that's where this song comes in, because when they released this album, this Heartbeat City album comes out there in the spring of 1984. And the first single there, what was You Might Think? What a catchy, I mean, that was all over MTV. Such a cool and catchy number. They followed that up with Magic, another supremely catchy pop rock little nugget. And the Cars are just rocking, but still staying within sort of that parameter that I thought that I knew of them, and I thought I understood about sort of their range and how much material they could cover. And that is when they threw me for a complete loop with the release of the third single from this album. Well, actually, I knew about it when the album came out, but eventually it became the third single, and that was this song right here called Drive. Now, the interesting thing about this, there's so many interesting things about this. This is another Ric Ocasek composition, but this time, as I said, it is Benjamin Orr, the bassist, on the lead vocal. And this song caught me so off guard. I mean, I remember when this album came out, and You Might Think it was already a hit. And as I said, Hello Again and Magic, all these great songs on this album. This was such a huge album for the Cars. But I remember just hearing this song and just getting knocked out. And I couldn't believe here was a song, just the composition itself was such a departure from the range of material and from the general sound that I was accustomed to with the Cars. The song itself was a departure, and the instrumentation and the arrangement and all of that, the musical side of it was enough of a departure. But to hear this vocal and to hear Benjamin Orr, as I said, the band's bassist, sort of come back out of the shadows and step up to the mic for a lead vocal that is just really unbelievable. You combine the musical arrangement and the backing track with the lyrics, which these are just some of Ric Ocasek's best lyrics, such thought-provoking and such compelling and sort of bittersweet and really profound lyrics. You put that as the background, and then you let Benjamin Orr put his voice to work singing those lyrics. And I'll tell you, this one just knocked me out, and I really couldn't believe it was the Cars. I was just absolutely stunned. And yes, I remembered, yes, I know, okay, Benjamin Orr used to sing more in the band. He sang some of those earlier singles. I did remember that. But I was just not prepared in 1984, just having grown accustomed to all of those cool, quirky, fun singles that the Cars were putting out on a regular basis. Every new album that came out had hits on it. I mean, the Cars were just putting them out. And I was just not ready for this song to come so far out of left field with such a unique sound. And I think an incredibly unique sound, not only for Ric Ocasek as the primary composer in the band, not only for Benjamin Orr as a vocalist, of course, and he gives it a great vocal performance, not only for the band, just for 80s music in general. I thought this was a song, and I think as I hear it now, all these years later too, this is a song that is so quintessentially of its time with the sounds, with the synthesizer sounds and the electronic drum sounds, and just the whole vibe of the song is so quintessentially 80s. And yet the vocals in this vocal performance by Benjamin Orr and these lyrics, to me, that's what sets this song so far apart, not just from the rest of the Cars material, but so much of the material there in the 80s. And that is exactly why it remains one of my, like I said, top 5, top 10 favorite songs of that entire decade. So yeah, Drive, man, what a song. We are going to get to it in 1 second. I just wanted to show you a couple pictures of the guys. Now, let's see, they're left to right. You would be looking at, I think we have Elliot Easton, the lead guitarist over there on the far left. What a great and underrated player he was. Quite an admired and respected player back there in the day. I remember hearing a lot of guitar players in the biz talking about Elliot Easton, pretty cool player. Next to him there, of course, is Benjamin Orr, who turns in such a epic vocal performance on this song. He's the bassist. In the center there, we have Ric Ocasek, as I said, rhythm guitar, lead vocals, and the primary songwriter for the band. Next to him, we have drummer David Robinson, and on the end, it is Greg Hawkes, the band's keyboard. Now, let's get to this song, and it's going to blow me away already. Again, I know it because I did earlier today when I was getting ready and queuing it up. So every time, this one takes me just straight back to the summer of 1984, and this was a song that I was using so much at work, and I just never got tired of. I used this song on so many different kinds of programs at AEI, and then I'd go home, and I distinctly remember, I will never forget driving home one day in the summer, and it was about 85 degrees, and I had the sunroof on my car open, and I just happened to flip on the radio, and this song came on. And of course, I already knew it and loved it, and I'd used it several times in the previous few months. But there it was on the radio, and just to hear it blasting out of the radio and know that everybody else in town was hearing it on the radio too, just made me feel so good, because I always just thought this was such an incredible piece of music. And man, has it ever stayed with me all these years later. It is Ric Ocasek, Benjamin Orr on the lead vocals, Boston's finest, man. It is The Cars from 1984 and Drive. Ah, what a sound.
Who's gonna tell you when it's too late? Who's gonna tell you things aren't so great? You can't go on thinking nothing's wrong. Who's gonna drive you home tonight? Who's gonna pick you up when you fall? Who's gonna hang it up
Man, I'll tell you, folks, I almost stopped it so many times during the song. I was so tempted to stop it. There's just so much cool stuff going on in that record. And as I hear it all the way through uninterrupted like that, that's why it was killing me to stop it. I wanted to point some stuff out, but so much cool stuff going on this track. Just some great electronic drums by David Robinson. The keyboard programming and the synthesizers and the way they're laying down sort of that backtrack of just, it's like these chords and this atmosphere is just hanging in the air. It's like a big curtain that is just hanging, a big veil hanging in the air. The way those chords just hang there, just unbelievable. Such an interesting sort of soundscape that created by the keyboards there in Greg Hawkes. Not a ton of guitar, a little bit of a different rhythm guitar track for a song like this. So not a lot of Elliot Easton and Ric Ocasek on the guitars on this one. But man, what can you say about Benjamin Orr? And of course, he was always a fine bassist and a fine vocalist, even when he wasn't doing the leads, and Ric Ocasek was handling the leads on so many of those other songs. Of course, Benjamin Orr in that context would have been the primary backup vocalist and providing those harmonies behind Ric Ocasek. So, just Benjamin Orr, obviously an integral part of that vocal sound of the Cars, even considering that Ric Ocasek was such a distinctive lead vocalist. So you put Benjamin Orr on these vocals, and he just brings, it's really the lyrics and the vocals. He brings such an interesting color. There's a color and a timbre to his voice in the context of a ballad and in the context of these particular lyrics, and the way this melody sort of works its way through that mist of those chords and the mist of those backing tracks. It's just really unbelievable. I think such an incredible musical accomplishment for the Cars there in 1984. Man, what a run. Just What I Needed, My Best Friend's Girl, Good Times Roll, Let's Go, Shake It Up, You Might Think, Hello Again, Magic, Drive. That's one. How many songs is that? 3, 6, 9. I mean, huge songs. Drive in the summer of 1984. This was a number 3 song on the pop chart, number 1 on the adult contemporary chart, no surprise there. Number 3 on the rock chart. Talk about a crossover hit. 3 on the pop chart, 1 on the adult contemporary chart, 3 on the rock chart, and 5 in the UK. So a big hit internationally over in the UK as well. And just deservedly so, because such a unique, such a beautiful, such a catchy, and such an unusual song, even by the standards of Ric Ocasek and the Cars. Now, the really crazy thing about this is, and I'll tip my hand here to the next video. So this is 1984 with Drive. Yet another huge hit for the Cars, right? It looks like they are just rolling. Well, we jump up 2 years to 1986, and Ric Ocasek is going to do a solo album, his first solo album. Well, he didn't hesitate to throw yet another curveball with his solo album. And maybe, in fact, as I look back on it now, and if I sort of try to make sense of these two songs, Drive and the one I'm going to play for you next, the Ric Ocasek solo song, I guess as I look back and try to make sense of this, maybe the second one, maybe the one that's coming up here, was sort of a backwards indicator that the first one wasn't as unusual as I thought it was. But I don't know, man. Drive just always killed me. There were 2 songs. I was thinking the summer of 1984. I mean, 1984 was just a ridiculous year for music. You go back and look at all the albums that came out and all the artists that were having huge hits, and just sort of what was out there in the pop, rock, and soul categories. And there was just so much great music out there. But I was thinking, I remember that summer pretty darn well. And I'll tell you, there were 2 songs that just, to me, were head and shoulders above everything else that I just loved more than anything in 1984. One of them was this one by the Cars there in the spring, Drive, from that Heartbeat City album. And the other one was Hard Habit to Break by Chicago from that great Chicago 17 album that came out just a few months after the Cars had come out with Heartbeat City. And I remember I used to program those. I'd program those songs back to back sometimes on my programs, and I always wanted them to play them back to back on the radio because I thought those were the two best songs going right there or certainly the two best ballads going there in the summer of 1984. What a song, man. Just such a unique story. Rick Ocasek writes it, and then Benjamin Orr just sings the heck out of that thing. And what a memorable piece of music. Benjamin Orr, of course, sadly passed many, many years before his time. He passed away all the way back there in 2000. And then Rick Ocasek, of course, here just a few years ago in 2019. So all due respect to those gentlemen and the rest of the Cars members for creating some pretty memorable music there in the 80s. Pretty crafty little catalog that they put together, and it certainly stands the test of time all these years later. No doubt about that. Drive. What an incredible song. Wow. Coming back with another one. We're not done with Rick Ocasek yet. This guy did some work back there in the day, man. I will tell you that, and I'll share another favorite with you just in a second. Coming right back with Rick Ocasek. See ya. What a songwriter, man. That guy wrote some songs. I'll take his catalog any day.